episode 27 of the Orchestra podcast. We have a fantastic guest with us today. Many of my students at Port Angeles High School will be familiar with the name Kirt Mosier. Am I pronouncing that correctly?
Yes, Mosier.
Wrote one of the pieces we took to contest back in October, and we sure love it. And I hope we can get into your mind a little bit and figure out why you are so able to write such fun music.
Well, probably because I'm half crazy, but I'll explain everything to you. So do you want to start off by me telling you a little bit about myself?
Yeah, that would be great. Just kind of what steps would one have to take to become Kirt Mosier?
Oh my, that would be a circuitous route. But students, it's great to be here with you or anybody else who's watching. I went to public high school. I sang in like a regional boy choir back when I was like 8. I took piano lessons when I was a little kid. I always knew I was going to be a composer. I'm not sure how, but my mother would play piano and I would tinkle around at the top of the piano, get my hands slapped and stuff like that. And she made each of her children take 3 years of piano lessons. And at that time, of course, I wanted to play baseball and football, so I didn't want to take piano, but she made me stay in. And thank you to her for her fortuitousness on pushing the issue. And I played in band. I played trombone and euphonium. And in orchestra, I played string bass. And I also, of course, played piano. And by the time I went to, I graduated, I just really couldn't think of anything else that brought me as much joy. And I wasn't necessarily like super music, even though I won all the music. It's weird. I'd win all the music awards in the high school and blah, blah, blah. But I still didn't know if that's what I wanted to do for sure. But I did know that it had captured my heart and music. And if you could have taken me at the beginning of my freshman year of high school and said, you can quit music, I would have said, yes. And then if you took me towards the middle or end and you said, you have to quit music, it would have left a hole in me. So there's some point where this switches in humans. I think I can only speak for males, but as a guy, I think we struggle a little bit, and we're kind of do dumb things growing up, and it takes a little longer for us. But after that, I started practicing trombone and euphonium and bass and even voice, started taking voice lessons so that I could be an all-around musician. So all through high school, I was in the musicals. I was drum major, all-state band, all of that stuff, all-state choir, things like that in high school because I began to practice. So then I went to KU, University of Kansas, for 2 years. But I actually was lucky and began playing piano professionally and singing professionally in Kansas City. Sometimes I would even play my trombone. I played in a Dixieland band of old guys, but they let the young guy come play stride piano with them. Then when they found out I played trombone, they said, play trombone. I said, I can't do both at once, but I could play bass trumpet. And so I bought a bass trumpet from a guy for $200, and it was a pretty good instrument. And I would set it up on the piano and kick stride with my left hand and solo with the Dixieland. And everybody would just go nuts. And this was in high school. I would practice I would literally, from my junior year on, I probably practiced 6 to 9 hours a day. I would actually literally take a sack dinner to high school and then sneak in my church, which was across the street from the high school, and practice all night. And so I did that. I did that for at least 2 solid years. Went to KU. I was playing professionally, and I could not keep the hours of coming back to Kansas City to play shows and be at a 7:30 clarinets techniques class at KU. So I transferred to UMKC Conservatory, the University of Missouri Kansas City Conservatory, got my bachelor's there, and I had met my wife. We were singers and performers in a theme park show at Worlds of Fun in Kansas. It's like a Six Flags, or I'm not sure what they have in the Northeast, but it's one of those big theme parks. Mm-hmm. So we met, and she had transferred there. I finished my music ed degree. I didn't see, for me personally, am I talking too much, or is this,
no,
you think
that's,
kids
that's
will
great.
find this interesting? Okay. I didn't see, for me personally, to go for a performance degree because I was already performing professionally and making pretty good money as a student, playing 6 nights a week, really playing a lot. And I could actually have made an actual living being just a performing musician, but you know, you don't have insurance, you don't have a lot of things when you're just a freelance musician.
Mhm.
And I did that all through college. I would actually like to go back and redo college and have more of a raw experience, be poor, and really just eat up my classes, because I looked at college at that time, because I was playing so much at night, as kind of a nuisance and something to get through. So I wish I could go back and grab that knowledge in the way that I know that I can. And I've done a lot of that on my own. But so all you youngins out there listening, if and when you get the opportunity for higher education, really grasp it. Don't just sweep it away like with a broom, kind of like I did. I was on the road performing in New York City. I played on some cruise ships. I did a lot of stuff. As a matter of fact, when I look back at my performing life, I have been very fortunate to get to do so many odd things. Like I wrote for a television show for PBS. I've got to write the 150th birthday celebration music at Arrowhead Stadium for the city of Kansas City. I've just got to do, I got to write a full-length ballet for the Portland Ballet Company in Portland, Maine. And I think I've gotten to do all these strange things because I'm so varied in my background. I have a very diverse background. Well, I was on the road, and the school district that I student taught at kept calling me, because the band director who I student taught with just gave me the second band and walked away and said, "They're yours," the very first day. So I shaped this band, and we went to festival and got the #1 rating. It's, you get a 1 or what. We got a 1, which with the second band, which was the first time in the history of that school with a student teacher. So they were wanting me to come work there. And I'm like, I don't want to be a teacher. I'm not going to be a teacher. And the next thing I know, I'm like, I want medical insurance for a year. Let's try it. And I went into teaching, and I just fell in love with watching kids' lights come on, and affecting kids positively.
Well, the kind of the route that you're discussing is oddly parallel to kind of where I was at in college, not too long ago. I was playing concertmaster in a musical pit orchestra. And so that's like every weekend in college.
Yes.
On.
Yep.
And I started playing in an orchestra up in Seattle that I'm now concertmaster with, and they let me conduct sometimes.
That's wonderful. Yeah.
I took on conducting a community orchestra when I was like 18, which was maybe a little too early for that, but it was a lot of fun. And so while you maybe saw college as the impediment of you getting to those things, I always felt like all of the performing that I was doing on top of the school was making my dream of music a little less fun. Every new thing, because you got to play that solo right tonight, or you're not getting paid.
Yes.
And so when I started teaching, it was kind of like all of the fun that I wanted music to be was back. In that, in a similar kind of way.
Yes.
I mean, obviously, my high school musicians aren't playing, Shasti 5 anytime soon. But to be able to make music for the point of enjoying it rather than relying on your performance to, eat dinner that night.
Right.
Which was sort of where I was at right at the end of my college career. Was in a similar line, I had moved down to Nashville for a while. And I have some family who are somewhat in the music industry down there. And I was taking some recording spots in the recording studios down there, which is just really hard, ruthless work. And like I weep for every pianist out there, because there's 18,000 people just waiting to jump in. But they are, short on fiddle players that can fiddle and read music.
That's
right. Golden combo. At least in the Nashville scene. But then I would work all day for pennies. And then at the end of the night, I was taking lessons with a guy named Buddy Spiker. I don't know if you've heard of him.
I've heard his name.
Yeah, he was one of the first fiddlers to really introduce like double stops, not just drums. And that really changed the fiddle game. And it's why awesome. Nashville country swing really is more jazz than country.
Right, absolutely. If you want to play guitar in a Nashville country swing band, you better have some jazz chops.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so there would be jam sessions
Mhm.
after everybody was done in the studio or taking their gigs, and
Mhm.
those were way more fun.
Yeah.
Just like hearing everybody's just wacky ideas or what they want. You'd hear a new fill you'd never heard before, and if you screwed up, they'd say, "Oh, I made that
Yeah.
same mistake on stage at this performance," and Dolly Parton was the main act or something.
Uh-huh.
And having it be non-threatening in that way, rather
Uh-huh.
than the studio where I was getting paid, way less fun
Yes.
because of the stakes of the
Mhm.
you don't eat tonight if you don't do this right.
Right.
But then
Right.
just hanging out and doing it because we love music.
That's where the real joy is. I think that's why I've
Exactly.
gravitated to student music, and I stayed in education for 31 years. Cried like a baby on my last day of teaching. Didn't want to leave. In this business, to go guest conduct or to write a commission for somebody, they're not going to really call you twice if you turn them down.
Yeah.
So I don't have an agent. It's just word of mouth, and you hope somebody calls. So I thought, I cannot be saying no to people because this is what I'm going to do after teaching. So I decided I wanted to teach for 32 years. I taught for 31. That's why I got out. That's also why I cried like a baby, because I didn't know I was going to be leaving that year after that year. But the students were very gracious. It was really sad. We were kind of like you. In Missouri, we don't have the luxury of having a whole bunch of assistant conductors like other states who have a lot of money to throw at it have. So I want to say 220 students with just me, and the first half of my day was at a technology academy teaching recording studio techniques and all that. So I had to cram 3 orchestras into 200. It was just
Yeah. Oh
huge.
yeah. Yeah.
And our high school only had, at the time, I want to say it had 18 or 1900 in it. So you can see the how much of the school that was using it. Sounds a
Yeah.
lot like your situation in Port Angeles, but we had a great time and a blast. And one of the reasons that I write the kind of music that I write for orchestras is because there are several reasons. Because I've been a professional musician and I know what kind of is really enjoyable and challenging, and hopefully
Yes.
within the same structure of ability level. And then I also know what it was like to play string bass in a group and set forever and not get cool parts.
Well, this is so really funny story that absolutely
Yeah.
exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah.
So, uh, I was voluntold to play bass in wind ensemble in college.
Okay.
They,
Where did you go to college?
Pacific Lutheran University. It's
Yeah.
in Tacoma, Washington.
Yeah.
So we were doing this. I want to say it was a Jennifer Higdon commission, but I could be totally.
Oh wow, that'd be hard.
Yeah. So
She's
they
amazing.
2 bass parts for a wind ensemble piece. They needed another bass player, and I was the only string major that had passed all the proficiencies.
Uh-huh.
And they didn't really have another bass player.
Yeah.
I show up, and I could use a bass, but maybe not play a bass. And I took a couple lessons, and I got up to speed. And there was some. We also did this piece. I forget his first name. Schwantner's the composer. From a Dark Millennium is the name of the piece.
I don't know that. I don't know the composer.
I mean, that a lot of that wind ensemble stuff that's so modern and just really challenging.
Yeah, it's really cool too.
So I've done some of the hardest bass stuff that isn't symphonic repertoire. The weird stuff, not necessarily melodic. I don't think I could passably play any of the All-State auditions for bass.
Right.
But when something hard shows up, I know how to do it.
Yeah.
So we're working on Red Ritmico, and everybody loves their parts.
Uh-huh.
Except the basses get to that bit at the end where they have to do the doubled 16th notes.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
And they say, well, that's not possible, Mr. Rodall. Like, oh, really? And so I walk back there, and I just was like, well, it's just, it's 3 notes.
Uh-huh.
You just have to double your bow. It's not that bad.
Uh-huh.
And I had picked that piece because I felt like everybody got a good part, including the basses.
Right. That's funny. A lot of times, even in lesser works or even in my advanced works, I have trouble not writing where, I don't, just like as a good teacher, you want to have pacing. You don't want your cello player sitting for 5 years while you talk to the viola, whatever. Well, the same kind of pacing needs to take place in a work for young people. And
Yeah.
so even when I'm writing advanced music, I'm like right this morning, right before this webinar or this podcast, I've been composing on the Florida All-State piece. Now these guys are one of the best All-States in the country. They can play anything.
Oh yeah.
And so I'm writing at a professional level. But as I write, I have trouble thinking, uh-oh, the English horn has sat too long. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I don't like how long the bassoons have not played. And so I find myself still orchestrating for students. And these are young people that are playing, and I want them to enjoy their part. So it's funny how my ideas get arranged within themselves to make the parts really enjoyable for people to play, if
Well,
that makes sense.
that leads into something that I observed, especially towards my later years in college. I was playing in a lot of community orchestras because a lot of these conductors were my buddies or
Right.
people who had been my coaches in youth symphony. And hey, we need another violin to play Mahler 5. Can you help
Yeah.
us out? And then kept playing with those groups because realistically, they're often more fun than the professional.
Right.
And as a teacher, I got to have, continuing clock hours to keep my certification in order. And so I find a community group that I enjoy playing with. And we went through a period with one particular group where we were auditioning conductors. And that taught me everything I needed to know about pacing and teaching and the way that you treat people.
Yeah.
Because a conductor who stops constantly to deal with this one thing that is important to them for God knows why.
Yeah.
And your whole violin section, which is, maybe 40 people, if you've got, a good size, first, second violin section, and they're not getting paid, are sitting there doing nothing while you tell the oboe player what you think the definition of a Beethoven staccato is.
Yeah.
And so in the same way, when I'm a teacher looking for compositions, I can't see, I want to see some breaks, like you're saying, where if the cellos have something really hard that everybody else doesn't have something that's going to get in the way of me fixing that.
Right.
Or that they have exactly the same thing with somebody else. So that particular moment in Red Rhythmico I was talking about, everybody's doing it all at the same time.
Yeah.
Including the basses. So they're not alone. And even though they thought it was really, really hard, we could work on it together and get it down.
Yeah.
So how do you think about the scope of a piece when you don't even know quite what direction you're going to take it? You've just you've got a commission. Florida All-State says, hey, Kirt, write us a piece, make it about this long. We've got, maybe you're already going to do a symphonic finale and something slow. So maybe give us an overture, and that's all the information you have.
Yep.
How do you sort of design the instrumentation from that?
That's a really good question. You're very close to what Florida asked for. They asked for about 8 minutes. They ask for something fanfare-ish, or they want something to really show off the orchestra. And that was it. That was the only stipulation. And so when I sat down to think about, okay, Florida, All-State, the first thing that I do is I think, is there anything that separates the group that I'm writing for from the rest of the world, or something that they might hold dear to themselves, or something of that nature? And for some reason, every time I think about Florida, I think about various shades of the color blue, like the beautiful turquoise of the shallow ocean, or the deep blue of the dark of the ocean, or the sky, and so when I combined all those colors together, I come up with the color azure, which azure is a kind of blue, kind of a turquoisey, beautiful sky blue. And so now I just have decided to explore that color, what that color means to me, almost as if I were a drone flying over everything from the swamplands, gator country, to the beautiful deep blue ocean. And you'll hear almost like splashes of sound go up and go down underneath the water. And all of that will be exciting and honor the quote peninsula of Florida. Same thing, like I did a commission for the Port Washington School District in where was it? Long Island, New York.
Okay.
And so they asked for a mass piece for elementary through high school. And I thought, well,
Oh, those are really hard to write for. Wow.
very difficult. Yeah. So I wrote this thing called Skyline Rising. It's published with Chose. And what I did there was I actually did research on the area and found out that most of the cement that built the skyline of New York City was taken from the sand pits in Port Washington back at the turn of the century. So I envisioned somebody being able to look across the water and see the skyline of New York City in a time-lapse photography rise. And so that's what gave me the impetus to write that piece. So a lot of the pieces that I write, something has triggered a feeling in me, and then I usually, when I'm on my road bike or in the shower, I start singing things and thinking through stuff. And like, if you were to take my phone and my voice memos, when I'm out on my bike, I have this little thing that attaches it to my bike, so I can ride, and you can see your phone and map your map and all that. But I can also click voice memos and start singing. So some of my voice memos, you can hear my chains going, and I'm just singing ideas into the phone.
It's really frustrating when you're riding in a car with someone else and you've got a really good idea in your head and you've got to get it down.
Yes.
The car thinks you're now insane. Before coming to Port Angeles, I taught in the Puyallup School District. And one of my choral colleagues, his name is Dan Davison. I don't know if you've ever come across him. He's like the second most published choral composer.
Oh, I'll have to check him out. Yeah.
It's mostly, middle level changing voice kind of stuff, but he's really good.
That's the hardest stuff to write.
But he has composer face, is what I call it. Sometimes you would walk into the office and he would be.
Yeah.
It's like, Dan, are you hearing music right now?
Yep.
And every now and again, he'd do the same thing to me, because I do a fair amount of arranging, more decomposing than composing, really.
Yeah.
But I know the feeling when you grabbed the thread and it's so fragile.
Yes.
That you have to give it all of your attention.
Right. And I have noticed that the older I've got, or the longer I've done it, that my threads they're not that earth-shattering. So I can always go back to it. Sometimes I'll write them down. Like, for example, this piece that I'm working on now, I have the main theme of the piece that I thought up many months ago, and I haven't even gotten to it yet. I'm orchestrating the opening with fragments of the main theme. So I actually wrote that down so I wouldn't forget it. I used to put a recorder by my bed because I thought I had all these great ideas in the middle of the night. And then when I woke up in the morning and listened to what I had sung into the recorder, it was just like a garbled, it was nothing, and I thought I was so awesome at night. So one of the things that could help any student composers you have, or could help your students write their 5-paragraph themes or anything for their English assignments, would be this. And I learned this at a composition workshop. Do not run the risk of taking yourself so seriously in thinking that you're writing the next marble statue of musical historical significance. Just write tinfoil music that can be reshaped, wadded up, or thrown away. Write garbage, and you'll become more prolific, and some of it may be really good. Does that make sense? I've noticed that the pieces that I've written that have sold the most or won awards or all that kind of stuff, they're not the pieces that I birthed like out of birth pains and spent forever on. Yeah. Like American Real is a piece that I wrote that won the NSOA Composition Award one year, and I literally wrote that in 30 minutes. I watched a show on the History Channel about the potato famines, and a line on that show triggered me. They said, if you were thinking that when you saw wagon trains circled in the West that you would hear cowboy music, you probably weren't going to hear cowboy music. You're going to want to you would hear a curious mix of an Irish fiddler with, and I'm like, ooh, American Real, So I took Irishy sounds and combined them with an Americana sound in a like big sky open country sound. And so it just came to me really fast.
The whole conversation we're really having is kind of the old school music history, programmatic music versus absolute music.
Yep.
And I think intellectually, Brahms and Bach are very intriguing, and there are things that they can do compositionally that I will never achieve. But none of the Brahms symphonies make me feel the way that the Hindemith Char music that he wrote overnight makes me
Yeah. Yeah.
and he wrote it overnight, and he wasn't really, he was just, King George died, I need to write a viola piece, I'll get on a boat,
Uh-huh.
this is what I got. But
Yeah.
somehow the spontaneity of that birthed better ideas
Yes.
than Brahms
Then
laid.
working it out and mhm.
Well, and
Uh,
what is good about uh, that kind of composition isn't the melody or a particular compositional tool. It's the, all of the stitching and the way that it
yes,
moves
the
together.
orchestration.
Exactly.
For example, there are people don't walk away whistling Nikolai Rimsky-Korsakov all the time. However, he was one of the world's greatest orchestrators.
Hmm.
And so I find the act of composition different than the act of orchestration.
Yes.
And I have really worked on my orchestrational skills as I've progressed through my career so that I can really give birth to all my ideas with just a real beautiful setting or orchestrations. And now, like, for example, this piece I'm working on today, mostly it's pretty much fancy orchestrational techniques that I've used and really splashes of colors. Sometimes when I go to concerts and I hear modern composers, that's all it is. There was nothing that ever, there was sound palettes, which I think are beautiful and I appreciate them. It just doesn't move me as much as a beautiful melody or melodic structure does. And that's why I gravitate towards those things. That's my personal preference.
Well, it's kind of maybe two really good examples. We've already mentioned Jennifer Higdon. I mean, a
Uh-huh.
master
Ooh.
composer.
And a master orchestrator.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then somebody like Edgar Meyer. He's
Yeah.
got the orchestrator mindset. He can do it.
Yeah.
But if you need a tune that's memorable in a new piece of symphonic repertoire,
Uh-huh.
he's going to give it to you.
Yes. Right. And when I write for like high level student groups, I want to write a violin part that at some part during the piece, they would think this could be an excerpt. This could be an orchestral audition excerpt. This is stringy. This is the way we want to play.
Yes.
Like, for example, in this this piece about a tornado that I had written that I told you I did with Georgia and Oklahoma All States.
Mm-hmm.
This is called Vortex Rising, and it's just wild and out there at times, but there's this fugue that happens in the middle of it, all the stringy stuff that the string players love to get into. It makes it makes it really enjoyable for them. I try to write idiomatic for all the instruments.
Yes.
And that's where my wind background really helps me both in conducting and writing, because I know what trombone players want to play, and I know what trumpets and horns want to play, the woodwinds. I know what they want, what's for them. If you've ever played a non-stringy piece, you know what I mean. That's obvious. It wasn't written for strings, or it was somebody that didn't quite get the concept of what we're doing here, right down to the bowings.
Anyone who's ever tried to arrange from winds to strings or reverse finds this out immediately.
Yes.
Because even the registration of the voices are, you'd think that the baritone euphonium part would just be able to take the viola or cello.
Yeah.
But really, it doesn't. It's either
That's
too
hard.
high or too low.
Yeah.
Put everybody in a new key now because that one instrument doesn't have a part.
Right. Yeah, that's exactly right. I've had many requests to move some of my string works and write them for band, especially a piece called Overture to the Wind. It's a grade 5 string work that I wrote for one of my first high school orchestras.
Mm-hmm.
And I can understand why they want me to do that, because it's a piece that goes and but the opening goes and those triplets lie really well under one up bow, and they lie well on the violin. But you start transferring that to wind instruments, and it almost sounds,
now you got to worry about the key breaks.
Yeah, and you got to worry about all this, and it almost sounds a little hokey. But on strings, it works. And so that's a very difficult, sticky wicket to try to write that way, because that is literally what we're talking about here, not writing idiomatically for the instrument that you're composing for.
But in the string world, there are so many of us that, and I've got one foot in this camp, is I think every kid who graduates from high school should have at least one opportunity to experience real symphonic music.
Yeah.
because for the vast majority of public school students, that's their last chance.
Right.
And I love how many community orchestras we have in this country and how accessible those are. And they're not afraid to play the real stuff. And for the most part, you can, as long as you have the forces. But outside of that making sure that experience happens, the vast majority of string orchestra music is, I mean, let's shake the Etch-a-Sketch for a second here. The grading string repertoire is like maybe 30 years old. If that. I mean, just putting a grade on how hard something is, because it's so much more nuanced and nebulous as compared to the band world, where it's like range and rhythm.
Right.
Just basically those two things.
Yeah.
But in the string world, it's shifting, yes, but it's different on every instrument for how hard it is, and really specific kinds of things. And so we're finally waking up to the idea of writing or commissioning works for a specific group of people.
Yeah.
So these are the kids I have at Florida Allstate. And this is kind of what they've done in the past, and these are their capabilities, and this is what we're looking for.
Yes.
And not seeing that as watering down string.
Right. Or actually coming up with something that is meaningful. Like I just did a commission for a advanced middle school orchestra that they could really sink their teeth in, grade 3, 3.5, if you want to call them grades. But that's what I love writing. I also had, stop me if I talk too much. There was a group in San Antonio, they commissioned me. This director that commissioned me, he put a lot of parameters on me. And at first I was a little bit annoyed. He said, we have a large Hispanic population, and we are called the Rangers, and we love the Texas Rangers, and we know that the Hispanic population as well as the Texas Law Rangers love horses. So we'd like something that honors all of that. And I'm like, my goodness, you've put too much on me. And so I went home and I started writing something, and I just fell in love with the piece. It's called Ride of the Rangers. And it's got the Holberg rhythms in it. Dun, 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 dun. And I did it with I did it in Korea, in South Korea, and they just loved it. You can find videos of it online. And I thoroughly enjoyed that. I wrote them actually level parts. He said, we want it for every kid in the high school. I said, okay, how about if I write you a nice, challenging high school piece that's really lays well, but then I'll also include simplified parts. So I went ahead and wrote those for him as well.
Well, and those are the kind of things that have existed in band for a long time.
Right, flex arrangements.
You flex band, and you watch string teachers at a convention go through sample sets of parts. If they see a violin 3, you're going to hear a chuckle. Like, you don't have viola players? What's wrong with you?
Yeah.
Well, you don't know everybody's situation, and if you were in a situation where you needed that viola 3, you better be happy you have it.
Right. Absolutely. When I was teaching high school, though, especially on my second, third, fourth orchestras, I would rearrange and move melodic parts into the cello and bass without telling anybody. And sometimes I did it so much so, and then I'd go in my studio at home, and we did this Irish piece, a Dumfries Place it was called. And the upper strings had really fun parts, but nothing for the cello and bass. So I moved it all over. You don't have to be a composer, just to write it into their part. And then I made this Irish background. I put speakers up behind the orchestra. And then everybody played for it. And that's where we get into this question of, are we making art or are we educating? Where do those two intersect? Because I didn't really care that much. I mean, I cared about the art. I cared about it being entertaining, but I wanted those kids to start developing some technique in the bowing and the rhythms and the triplets in the cello and bass. And I didn't want that opportunity to pass them by. So I was willing to change it so that there weren't a lot of drones, there wasn't a lot of harmony, but there was a lot of melody, and everybody got to feel cool. And I put all the drones and harmony into the recorded parts with the Dobran Irish drums and everything, and people just went nuts over that.
And like you said, like, we could all just go and self-publish, but there'd be no visibility. And maybe
Right.
like, and even the way that the groups that we all belong to and you know, communicate with each other, like the Facebook group that pretty much every string person is involved in, you know, that's really not the place that you want to be selling yourself. And
Right.
I wouldn't even think they would allow that kind of thing.
Yeah. Well, you know, in the band world, though, they can self-publish. Like, I mean, they want to know what the next Paul Dooley piece is. You go to their website, you can buy it. Yeah, you can go right there and buy it. And those guys are experiencing a lot of success. There is some success. Like sometimes I call it mailbox money. If somebody orders something off my website, some weeks I'll have 5 or 6 pieces ordered. Well, if they're $50 and I had 5 pieces go, that's some money for that week. And then, you know, take 10% out for expenses. That's not bad. If that were hitting worldwide and starting really that could really be big. And I have a feeling that over time, it may get that way on known composers, but the music publishers are always going to have a place in the development of our music.
Well, and to put it all in one place for a teacher that doesn't have a lot of time to go looking around and searching, is great. And obviously you're not the person to be talking to, you know, why do they want this price for that and this price for that other thing?
Yeah.
And then so much for extra parts.
It's kind of how, like $7.50 for extra parts, or $4.50 or $3.50. Those seem to be the 3 numbers I see.
Well, you've got to believe that they've done the research to find out how much money most people are getting to buy, you know, how many pieces every year. And,
right.
I mean, they've got great marketing people. They figured it out. And then to demand that, you know, everybody has an original at contests. And if you worked hard to compose it and you created it, absolutely, it's not fair to just make 100 copies and give that away for free because you bought the piece once. But at what point is it unrealistic to expect schools where their music program could even get cut the next year to spend, I mean, I've done the math once, how much it would be to actually buy an original for every one of my kids.
Oh, it's too much.
No, none of those cello parts are coming back.
No. Same way with trombones in band.
Yeah.
But what I think now, you might have to do a little research. I believe you can make educational use copies for rehearsals.
Yes.
And then for performances, what I used to do was make sure I had 1 per stand. But when you have large orchestras like we're talking about here, you still got to go out and buy those extra parts for performance. And that can get pricey, especially on masterworks. You know, like, what did we do one year that it caught? Oh, any Russian music. We did the Real Russian Easter Overture one year, full orchestra, and my orchestra was so huge that I had to buy so many parts. It cost me $750 to perform that piece.
Well, thank God we have IMSLP now, and that's in the public domain.
Yeah, I don't know if Russia's released their pieces.
Well, the Russian Easter, all of Rimsky-Korsakov is in public domain.
Now, when did that happen?
I think in 2013.
Oh wow! This was
is still deep.
Yeah, you can't do any Shasti. When this happened, it was, what was it? It was about the late '90s, and I happened to have orchestras that were just fantastic, and we were doing masterworks.
Russian Overture is my #1 youth orchestra overture.
There you go.
Invite me out to do. Everybody gets to play. Everybody gets a solo. And you can't beat the ending. I mean,
can't beat the ending.
Full blast at the end.
Even trombones get a good part.
Even the trombone.
Yeah.
Oh gosh. Well, as we reach the denouement of this conversation, I ask all of my guests one question.
All right.
If you could look back on the history of your career in music, and maybe a time when you were struggling or questioning what direction to take, what might you go back and tell yourself to either have made an easier time for yourself or to maybe have made a different choice or something of that sort?
Let me think. I'm trying to think overarching here. What might I do to make it better or easier for myself? Don't take myself so seriously that I lost all the momentary joy. You know, a lot of us mortgage today for tomorrow. A lot of your high school kids tend to do that. I'm going to go here with my life after I graduate. But you're in the here and now. Love this moment and become really great at what you do and cherish the time that you're working out you're working out your vibrato. Really enjoy the micro steps that it takes to get better and latch on to good practice habits that way, rather than just wishing you were someone else in another time and that you were older. It's funny how have you ever heard that saying, we spend the first 18 months of children's lives teaching them to walk and talk, and then the next 18 years telling them to shut up and sit down.
Yeah.
uh, it's so I think that would be um, the advice that I would give myself. And here's why I say that advice. I got very lucky and I had that combination of talent and work ethic that I was able to achieve a lot of success for each stage of life that I was in. I was super lucky that way. Like when I was in high school, I was the lead in the musicals and I was playing professionally. Very few high school kids are doing that. I was just lucky. And all through my life, I've been lucky that way. So I don't have a lot of advice to give myself in that front, but I do have advice on what I said. Don't run the risk of taking yourself so seriously that you give up today's joy.
Mm, that's a great way to end this conversation. Uh, you've already sent me some recordings to include in this podcast.
Yeah.
I hope the guests enjoy that at the beginning and end of this. This has been a really fun conversation. And
Thank you. Thank you for having me, Nathan. Oh, I have one more thing for you. You know how we were talking about Russian Easter Overture?
Yeah.
My orchestra was going to play that. We were on the road to MMEA, Missouri Music Educators. We were the feature orchestra playing, and we were going to play Russian Easter Overture. So to get the orchestra pumped up, I made a hillbilly version of Russian Easter Overture that you can find on SoundCloud.
Oh, okay.
And I played it over the bus's system for the kids, and they just died. It's me singing now, 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 and playing banjo and all sorts of stuff. So look that up for your podcast, or have your students, give them an assignment. They got to go find Kirt Mosier, Russian Easter Overture, hillbilly style.
Okay. Well, I've got a couple questions off camera, but thank you so much, Kirt. We really appreciate it.
It's been my pleasure.